Innovate. Enable. Cyril Amarchand Mangaldas presents CNBC TV18, The Thought League, Season 2.
Hello and welcome to the Thought League. Today we will focus on the humongous opportunities for the startup world in India, standing up for the startups, the enabling framework, ecosystem and the right mentorship that can make this a golden period for India in business and innovation. Joining me for this discussion, we have Anjali Bansal, the founder at Avana Capital, and Cyril Shroff, the managing partner at Cyril Amarchand Mangaldas. Welcome to CNBC TV18. Anjali Bansal, you've worked on this particular landscape a lot. Let me ask you first, how is the startup culture really enhancing India's growth, and how do you see the opportunities that lie ahead of us?
Pleasure to be here with you, Nisha, on the Thought League along with Cyril. I think it's a very interesting topic that we have picked today. Startup ecosystem in India has never been more vibrant. I think we are now seeing startup version 3.0 starting from 2000 to 2006, then 2006 to maybe about 2015. And today what we are seeing is a magical confluence of three things. Tremendous ideas, absolutely fearless, tremendous ideas on innovation, an exceptional set of talent coming into this space. I think in all my 20 years in India that I've seen in this space, we've never had a better set of talent, absolutely exceptional talent, and the availability of capital. So there is a golden decade ahead of us, which brings together the power of ideas, great talent, and capital. So given the technology-led innovation that is coming out of India, I'm very, very positive and bullish on the big positive change that these innovations will bring about in addressing some of the large-scale problems. So not only will they create a lot of value for shareholders, but a lot of value for society and country when it comes to addressing issues like employment and livelihood generation, market linkages, better sustainable, environmentally friendly. And we are seeing a lot of action now also in the climate tech and the sustainability innovation space. So I think startups really provide a lot of value to society and to the country.
Right. So golden decade, it seems like when it comes to the startup opportunities. But Cyril Shroff, we have discussed this topic several times, and Niti Aayog had mentioned right here on the Thought League that India could be the tech garage of the world. Do you think that is manifesting now?
Oh, absolutely. And apart from the factors that Anjali mentioned, I think there are a lot of external factors at play for us as well. For example, the tech crackdown in China is working tremendously well for India because global capital, particularly which seeks out startups and future unicorns, doesn't have too many places to look for. And as the China environment is becoming difficult, the Indian opportunity is on fire. So I accept that. And coming to the tech garage aspect of it, I think 3 or 4 points that I would make. I think first, India has over the last decade or so, particularly in the last few years, invested very heavily on public digital goods, like the India Stack, the Health Stack. And the design that has been followed in that is a very interoperable design. So the same digital infrastructure can be used for a bunch of things. I think the finance minister also recently called it in terms of what is developing now as a blessing of unicorns. And I think by 2030, we are probably headed for more than 150 plus unicorns just from India. Other factors at play are, just to repeat a line from the last episode, was the 4Ds, demography, demand, democracy, and data. There are very few markets in the world who are as data rich as we are. And as has been said, India will become data rich first before it becomes financially rich. So I think we are in almost in a positive way, in a perfect storm of positive factors. And it's truly a golden age ahead.
All right.
So that's my thoughts.
A perfect storm, as you have put it. Of course, the kind of wealth creation that we are seeing, the culture of innovation as well developing, and on the other hand, the job creation as well. But Anjali Bansal, let's reflect on the overall ecosystem as well as the framework. Is it enabling enough for these startups to grow?
Indeed, Nisha, we do have enabling infrastructure and increasingly supportive policy frameworks. Let me start with something that is an absolutely unique innovation coming out of India, which is the development of a very large scale public digital infrastructure. Much like highways, roads, ports, bridges power a country's economic growth, similarly, the creation of digital highways does the same thing. Take, for example, no other country in the world has 1.3 billion people with a unique biometric ID that we have in Aadhaar. It enables businesses, individuals, and government to create unique identification, makes KYC much easier. Second is the development of our payment system, UPI, and the India Stack. So in the last 5-6 years, ever since the India Stack got rolled out, we have seen the development of business models, which actually would not have been possible otherwise. Earlier, it seemed like every company would have had to build its own highway to actually drive on it. Today, the highways exist. So that I want to talk on the public digital infrastructure side. On the second, we also have a very robust, probably one of the most robust digital networks anywhere in the world, which of course sits in the private sector, but is available. Third, on tax, increasingly very good sort of consultative approach, both from the regulator, whether it's SEBI, it is RBI, with sandboxes being created. Tax authorities becoming more conscious of what startups need. Some work to be done, of course, but it is a continuous, consultative, dialogue-led journey. So a lot that is happening, that is enabling. Similarly, on capital flows, on the policy front, we are seeing the development of domestic capital markets. More recently, there is, it's actually not just enabling, but urging the participation of pension funds, EPFO, as well as LIC and some of our largest financial institutions to participate in fund of funds and the startup space. If you look at other countries, a lot of their capital actually comes, long-term capital comes from these kinds of players, and that is starting to happen in India now. Currently, about 80% of the capital invested in India is overseas or offshore capital. So as we see unicorns and 150 unicorns develop over the next few years, then some of that value should also get captured in our domestic markets, for which the participation of domestic capital is a must.
So, all right. So, Anjali, you made some very interesting points, including the domestic pools of capital, which can really support the startup culture. But one point that I want to pick upon is the infrastructure that is getting created. And many opine that where India may lack in physical infrastructure, the digital infrastructure may really come and support. Now, in this particular aspect, though, Cyril Shroff, what do you think about the legal regulatory policy as well as the tax framework for thriving startups?
If I can step back for it, so despite the fact that there are so many factors working in our favor, there is nothing inevitable about the fact that this whole India success story on startups is going to come alive. A lot has to be done on the policy front. And the policy drivers will have to just make sure that the momentum is kept up. I'll just touch upon a few points. First, the entire topic of ease of entry, existence, and exit. I think there has been undue focus on ease of entry, but not enough focus has been given on existence and exit, because of which there is a very strong fear of failure. If you have to create a very strong entrepreneurial Silicon Valley-ish type of culture, there should be no fear of failure. Failure should be treated as a part of learning more than anything else. But I think part of the problem in the Indian culture and the regulatory culture, if I can call it that, apart from the regulatory cholesterol, which is the existence part, is there is a fear of failure. So failure is viewed as malafide. Then I think we need to focus more on contract enforcements also, because a lot of the startups are built around some kind of IP that is unique. And you can't build this whole infrastructure of a startup system unless you have a very strong enforcement system. The new world of startups, which are largely tech-based, do not have many physical assets. A lot of it is intellectual assets. And we therefore need not only strong IP protection laws, but contract enforcement as well. And this ties in with another topic which we have touched upon many times, is the entire data protection and data privacy aspects as well. You're not going to be able to build such a large consumer tech-oriented startup system unless there is a strong data protection aspect to it as well. and we've been having these stop-start, initiatives as well. We finally need to now get to a point where say, okay, it's done, and this is the framework. There's another aspect, I think, a more general point I'll make is that we need to have much more trust-based laws and regulation rather than micromanagement. It's too rule-based, and we need to, gradually change the regulatory and the legal culture to a much more principle-based culture. And that will then sort of pick up points like the tax and, there's so many other issues, which actually, if you look at it from a promoter point of view or a founder point of view, these are very big issues. It's no wonder that out of the first 50 unicorns, 39 are actually outside India. They've been formed outside India. Whilst they have the market is in India and they're India oriented, but the entity is foreign. There has to be a reason for it, right?
Yes. So very, very important point that was raised by you, Cyril Shroff, that why are the Indian startups setting up their entities overseas? Global direct listing is not available, but still a large part of these startups have gone overseas. And on the other hand, they are even funded by the global players. So this is the aspect to be looked into, but the robustness, as you mentioned, also lies in easy entry as well as exit. But the lifeline remains as the funding capacity, and where is the pool of capital coming in from, and what are the aspects that the startups need to really look into. We'll discuss that on the other side of this particular break on the Thought League.
Cyril Amarchand Mangaldas presents CNBC TV18, The Thought League, Season 2. Cyril Amarchand Mangaldas presents CNBC TV18, The Thought League, Season 2.
Welcome back. You're watching the Thought League, and we are discussing standing up for the startups. And the lifeline, as I mentioned, for these companies has always been the funding that is provided as part of their growth trajectory. Let me ask Anjali Bansal, how is the funding opportunity at the moment? Many say global investors have benefited much more from our startups than the Indian investors have.
That is not untrue. And that is because, as I mentioned earlier, about 80% of the capital that has come into the Indian startup ecosystem has been global capital. So consequently, when there is value creation coming out of these companies and they turn into unicorns or even bigger, then obviously a lot of that value capture goes back to the capital providers that are not Indian. India needs all the capital we can get, so we should be welcoming of foreign capital. But at the same time, domestic capital has to stand up as well and participate in this space so that they are able to capture. And as a country, we are able to capture more value from, frankly, as I mentioned earlier, it's our ideas, it's our talent, and it's our technology that is creating these enterprises, and our market really that is creating these enterprises and the value. But in order to capture that value, more domestic capital has to participate. We are seeing more interest now from certainly the private sector. So HNI, family offices, successful entrepreneurs are putting money back into startups. There is enabling regulation now for LIC, for EPFO, and some of the large public sector financial institutions to also participate. Some work to be done for corporates to be able to participate in startups. But yes, the process is underway. Capital is coming in.
Let's talk about the startups at a much initial stage when they need to get their capital structure right, their balance sheet needs to be healthy, and they are not dilutive too early. Cyril Shroff, what do you have to say on this?
So that's a great point, Nisha. And as corporate lawyers, when we see the sort of capital stack when promoters come to us either at a pre-IPO stage or even at the sort of funding stage, very often it's a mess because a lot of founders have given away too much equity in too small size slices. They've kind of dribbled it out to too many people, which makes it almost impossible for sort of a proper, and then they're spending a lot of time trying to consolidate it back. So this is probably a reflection of the investment culture, as well as the lack of confidence at the early stage and the absence of venture funding. These are the, I think, three venture debt funding. These are some of the factors that have contributed to what the capital stack actually looks like. And this is one area which I think requires a lot of mentorship.
Right. So we touched upon all the types of corporate finance and funding requirements and capabilities that are required. But Anjali Bansal, one important point made by Cyril Shroff is also on mentorship. A large part of the early startups are mentored by the investors who come on board, who even take board positions. How do you see this particular space in getting the capital structure right and the business plan right at a very nascent stage?
So Cyril made a very good point around mentorship. So typically startups seek mentorship from other founders, but entrepreneurship is a very lonely journey. And I have a lot of respect for young or old entrepreneurs. It is a lonely journey. It requires a lot of courage and a lot of commitment. India is developing our mentorship model. Right now, it is largely informal. They sometimes do get support from the VCs on the cap table, but in the very, very early stages, even when the companies are not ready really for organized VC funding, there are incubators and accelerators, there are angel groups, but there are pros and cons. Sometimes it ends up, as Cyril mentioned earlier, with a very splintered cap table, where they may have given away too much equity too early at a very low valuation. So they have diluted a lot. And by the time they are ready actually for VC funding, it's a difficult operating expertise and experience. So we encourage our founders to think about creating advisory boards, pools of advisory equity that they can bring real experts on to help them, who have absolutely no conflict, right? They're not an investor, they're not on the cap table, but they're there to support the company. That is starting to happen. We have seen incubators and accelerators. Government of India announced a Startup India Seed Fund to provide about 1,000 crores of funding to incubators across the country. So going beyond the usual Bombay, Delhi, Bangalore type of startup clusters to tier 2, tier 3 cities, to deep tech, deep science companies, which have a longer gestation period. So I'm hoping that from that ecosystem, some more support will be made available to startups also.
All right. So incubation is a very, very big thrust. But Cyril Shroff, as we go on this entrepreneurship journey, success and failure are two most important points, and both can go hand in hand. So right to failure is also equally important as a mindset, Mr. Shroff.
Yeah, absolutely. So any entrepreneurial ecosystem necessarily has a number of factors, one of which is the freedom to fail. And freedom to fail without a moral judgment. I think the linked concept which I would like to build upon is the governance and culture. So we've seen globally as well that many of the most successful startups and which kind of then achieve mythical status as well have had a very toxic work culture. So one of the other pieces of advice that I would have for startups is to invest quite early on creating the right mindset and culture for growth, for curiosity, and for humility as well. So if you don't invest in your governance system, you're going to land up with a big problem at some later stage. And it's also about successful startups keeping their ego in check. Sometimes they just get carried away by their initial successes. When from almost nothing, you become a multi-billionaire in a matter of 24 to 36 months. Sometimes people go crazy, and I think that's the beginning of the downfall. One piece of advice that I would have, and is it's addressed to both the policymakers as well as to the startup system, is to invest more in niti rather than niyam. And have good governance principles surrounding that, because that is what will sort of stand in good stead. So value creation is not going to be about valuations. Finally, it is going to be about sustainability and purpose.
That's right. So many aspects there when it comes to the entrepreneurship. But Anjali Bansal, final word to you. How do you define success, and what is it that entrepreneurs must keep in mind?
Sometimes success gets defined in this space in terms of valuation. And unfortunately, I find even media does more coverage of funding rounds and markups and consequently unicorn, unicorn. That is what is tracked. But entrepreneurs and investors, I think they're both investors also carry responsibility on this. that we have to be responsible as businesses first. Valuation comes, but valuation comes when you actually have sustained value creation in the company. And value creation is when you are providing value to customers, to employees, to your supply chain partners, and overall ecosystem. So much like we think about large companies, stakeholders have to see value for there to be real value creation in the company. However, in the early stages, of course, value is created from the entrepreneur's energy, their passion, their innovation, their ideas, their energy. But ultimately, that is what creates value. Yes. And I completely agree with Cyril's points around governance. It's never too early to start on governance. And people confuse governance with compliance. Compliance is following the law. That's a given. But good governance is following responsible business practices, being good to your people, being true to contract, and having the right intent. And follows from there is culture. We have seen many companies that have become iconic global brands and then have stumbled because they actually haven't built the right culture.
All right, so Anjali Bansal made many points there, but she also took a pot shot at media coverage. Well, we are all for sustainability, so sustainable relationship with the shareholders, even in the listed space, and sustainable valuations is what the overall ecosystem should be looking at. So quite a riveting discussion on standing up for the startup culture in the country. Thanks so much, Cyril Shroff, as well as Anjali Bansal, for joining us right here on CNBC TV 18.
Cyril Amarchand Mangaldas presents CNBC TV 18, The Thought League, Season 2.
Focus, ideate, innovate, enable.